let's shift gears a little bit, Jay. You know, you mentioned your blog, you mentioned a lot of the writing that you do, especially this interesting study around the influencers. But recently, and I love this, you wrote, because I'm a firm believer in this. In fact, we teach courses around, how do you sell outside of IT? You wrote an interesting article about shadow channels. Can you explain to everybody listening in what exactly you mean by shadow channels and what the importance of it is these days?
Yeah, sure. I'll give a little bit of background. The word shadow channel came from, it's an offshoot of shadow IT or rogue IT.
Hmm.
So the backstory is, about 10 years ago, 90% of all technology decisions were made by IT managers, CIOs, IT departments, etc. That started to shift, especially as the cloud started to take form and lines of business started to make decisions. So VPs of sales and marketing and finance and operations down the line would start to make technology decisions, and big ones. And in some cases, and today, it's 72% of all technology decisions are now made outside of IT in these lines of business. So there's a couple other nuances to that. It's not only the technology decision, 58% of the time they're choosing the outside vendor or service provider. So they're choosing the channel partner. It's not IT. And in 30% of the cases, IT is not even involved.
Right.
So from a security, backup, disaster recovery, all the things that IT would bring to the table, they're not even involved. And this has been a massive change for the channel because in history, the channel's gone through dozens of technology changes. If you go back to 1982, can you imagine the whirlwind that we've been through? They've been through, a dozen business model transformations, going from, break fix to value add to solution providing to, managed services. I mean, they've had to reinvent their company. They've had to change on a dime in terms of technology. But the thing that has held constant is the customer buy-in journey. And that's now changed. And I make the argument that this might be the most transformational change of all that many channel partners may not make. And I give, kind of three reasons for that. One is they're not great, sales and marketeers. Great channel partners, or most of them, the majority of them started as technicians.
Absolutely.
You've read the book, The E-Myth. I mean, this book could have been written about our channel. These are very smart, capable people who, were fixing PCs or installing telephones or whatever they were doing. They got too busy, so they hired a buddy, they hired another buddy, they hired another buddy. Then all of a sudden they've got a multi-million-dollar company that, basically they're still a technician. So, they're not as savvy to be able to get into these lines of business with the marketing and sales and skills required. So that's number one. Number two is level of sophistication. I talk about something, I invented a word again called vectors. Back 10 years ago, we used to say, you got to verticalize, you got to specialize. Nobody likes generalists. So everybody, got on their horse and said, okay, great. Let me go read HIPAA and high tech. And okay, now I'm healthcare.
Now I'm an expert, right?
But I am, I understand the ramifications and the personal information, the patient record acts and the EMR systems. And so I can talk my way around it. But the VP of marketing at a mid-sized ambulatory care clinic in upstate New York could care less about HIPAA. The only thing they care about is they don't put their CEO in jail for something.
Right.
But they want to drive leads for their clinic. And if you walk in and go, I'm healthcare expert, they're like, well, that's great. That's one of five vectors. I really need you to be an ambulatory care, mid-sized clinic type of expert. Number one. Number two, I need you to be an expert on marketing automation, which is the technology tool set that we're going to be using to drive leads. Number three, if you did this at a hospital, great, or if you did it at a small dentist office, great, but I'd rather you be a mid-sized clinic with 50 doctors, specialty. So that's the segment. I'm also in upstate New York, so the fact that you did this in New Jersey or Pennsylvania or San Diego, it doesn't matter because it's not the same regulatory legislative environment. So I need you to understand where I am and what I'm doing. So I need you to know my sub-industry. I need you to know my line of business, which is, marketing, driving leads. I need you to know the marketing software that I want to use. I need you to know, how to drive for 50 doctors. These are complicated 5 vectors that reading the HIPAA or High Tech Act doesn't get you very far. So, long conclusion, I came up with this concept called shadow channels because I spent a long time researching and studying who are the new influencers in the room when that VP of marketing's making this decision at the clinic. So there's 5 different sets of shadow channels that are now influencing those decisions. And I'll just quickly rhyme them off. Number 1 is the SaaS ecosystem. And that could be Salesforce. In this case, it would be Marketo or a HubSpot. Could be a NetSuite if it's finance. Could be a Workday if it's HR, etc. There's big ecosystem platforms in the SaaS world that are likely to be in the room. So in this case, it'll be a Marketo or a HubSpot or an Eloqua, Pardot, Acton type of rep that's in the room. Second person that's going to be in the room is the industry specialist. So back in the day, let's go back 10 years, there's almost as many accounting CPAs in the country as there are channel partners, like 150,000 of them. There's 100,000 plus marketing companies. There's 100,000 plus legal companies, digital agencies, all these kind of industry-based professional services firms. 10 years ago, were doing other stuff. Today, over half of them are now doing technology. If you go to their website, it would be hard to distinguish their website from one of our channel partners, traditional channel partners' websites, in terms of the IT services and sales and everything else that they perform. And that number, CompTIA did a nice piece of research across 3 different industries, but those numbers are going to 80%. So basically, every other professional services company in every other industry is turning into technology companies to transform their own businesses that are quickly eroding. So the competition just went up by 5x.
I was just going to say the noise in the marketplace, the competition is just incrementally just out there. It's incredible.
Yes. So that's the second person in the room. The third person is there's a whole ISV community now. It's not going to be enough for you to install Marketo to drive more leads in your clinic. There's a couple of software vendors that take Marketo and fine tune it for your environment, specifically to keep you protected under, healthcare laws and to, do creative things to get patients into this clinic. I mean, they specialize in that area. They're very vector focused. And those ISVs are going to be part of your influence circle. That's number 3. Number 4, there's a born in the cloud set of partners that are out there that do traditional things like security and backup and disaster recovery. I call them the adult in the room. But if you're building this team and building this influence structure, again, you don't want to lose your own job. So you want to meet your KPI of driving more leads, but you don't want to put your CEO in jail. So as part of a proper project, you want to make sure that you've, got things buttoned down and you're looking, outside of the blinders. So that's the born in the cloud influence that you'll get in the room. But these guys don't resell technology. They some of them don't even take finder's fees, based on manufacturers. They really work as integrators and implementers of SaaS platforms. So they'll stitch together this ISV with Marketo and put it back into the backroom systems to make it all work flawlessly.
Yeah.
And they'll do that in a very secure way. And again, they're not looking to get a nickel from the vendors that they're repping. They're not really repping vendors. They're out there, collecting $5 for every $1 you spend on the SaaS platform.
Right. Right.
And then the final and 5th group is there's a whole startup community, and there's tens of thousands of startups, and they're hungry and they want their first logos. So they're, if they've built a widget or done something, it doesn't have to be software. I mean, it could be a beacon, it could be a number of hardware, it could be anything. But somehow they've done something to revolutionize driving leads in a, clinic environment. And that's what they're betting the business on. And they want you as a logo. They're going to bend over backwards and maybe even customize their own software, build software for you that makes this whole thing really hum. And that's a startup community. So nowhere in there in the 5 people is the guy who installed the printer, the people that put in the phone system, the managed service provider who fixes your PC. None of those people are in the room at the moment. And remember, 72% of decisions are now made in that room. So how do the vendors, the medium, the small, the big, how do any vendor get representation in that room if you're not influencing the influencers, which are those 5 sets of people. Those are shadow channels.
Yeah, really, really interesting work, Jay. And and it dovetails what you and I have spoken about this before. What we talk about a lot is business guidance selling. Upskilling the sales acumen of people, and you have to take into account what you're talking about, the shadow IT, with the concept we talk about, the business guidance, because when you marry the two of those together, you're influencing all these people in the shadow IT world, what you're referring to. Then you're influencing all the people outside of the IT person at the customer end. How do you sell into the VP of marketing? And you always have to think about these shadow channels when you're doing that. It's great stuff, and you're absolutely correct in talking about that.